Ryan, welcome to the Transition Podcast, man.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you coming on. Doug's talked to me about you. I know that you run the Project Grapple, and we'll get into that. And he's super excited about what you're doing with kids in the inner city and the resources and the opportunities that you're creating. It's funny, I just had Nolan Carroll on the podcast last week, and we were talking about the same thing, how important it is to give back to kids and to pour into them love, respect, character. And I know that you're doing that from what I hear, and we'll take a deep dive into that. But before we start, I want our listeners and I want our viewers to know a little bit about you. I know you're a big jiu-jitsu guy. I happen to be around jiu-jitsu now because my kids do jiu-jitsu, and I have the ultimate respect for the sport. So welcome.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, like, so I guess in terms of like jiu-jitsu and everything, I came to the sport late. Like when I was in high school was right around the time when Royce was fighting the UFC. And typical high school kid, like football player in high school, you know, you're like the biggest kids, like the baddest kid in the school. And like, you know, you think you have like a certain level of confidence, like as an athlete, and as football players tend to have a little bit extra. And we found like the UFC. And so like we would always go to my friend's basement and we'd watch the UFC. And I remember we saw Royce, you know what I mean? And this guy came out in like pajamas. And like as a kid, growing up, karate was like, I would say karate was not widely respected. I think at that point, karate had become very like profit oriented and maybe like watered down from its like original part, like after the Karate Kid and stuff. Like you saw karate schools pop up, and karate was kind of like, at least then when I was coming up, you'd be like, oh, it's kind of a joke, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you do karate? And this dude came out like in pajamas, you know, looked like a karate outfit. And you're like, there's no way, like this dude's about to get worked. Like, and then this little skinny guy came out and he would like smash everybody. So that was like the spark, you know, like all my friends were like, yo, like, what is this? Jiu-jitsu was not like it is now. You know what I mean? You couldn't find a gym and everything. So we looked and stuff and we didn't really find, you know, we couldn't really see anywhere to train. But
prior to jiu-jitsu, you're from Southern California.
No, Northern California.
Northern California. Yeah, yeah. Okay, from the Bay Area.
Yep.
Okay. So were you doing jiu-jitsu as a kid?
No, this was already like, I was in high school when I first like kind of, when we saw the UFC and it was like a spark, but then you couldn't find, like a jiu-jitsu gym was really difficult to find back then. So then I went to college, and then I went to San Francisco State and I found a jiu-jitsu gym in San Francisco. So that's when I started actually in college.
Nice, man.
Yeah, and that was like, at that time to find the gym was like...
was tough.
It was tough, man. I went like 3 times trying to find it, you know, because I saw like somewhere the address and you would go and it didn't look, you'd look at be like, man, the door's locked. It was on the 2nd floor in the Tenderloin, which if you're familiar with San Francisco is like really bad neighborhood. And like, you're like, nah, I don't know. The door's locked. I guess I'll come back. There wasn't a ton of signage and stuff. So, but eventually that's how I started. So I started there. And then that kind of like sent me on my way for jiu-jitsu.
And that's amazing. I like I was telling you earlier, I love jiu-jitsu. I've rode a couple times. My kids do it every Tuesday and Thursday. Yep. And actually one of our really close friends from school, their family, his father, one of the dads, works for our federal government, and he's big into jiu-jitsu. Yep. And when we were first introduced to the sport, you know, I loved it because I have a respect for martial arts. Like, I'm an ex-athlete, as you know. Yep. And there's something about martial arts that I found that I love. Anytime I meet somebody in martial arts, the first thing I realize is how calm their demeanor is, which you exude that, how kind and genuine they are, and the self-discipline to have emotional intelligence. And that's something that I love. And I preach in this podcast because emotional intelligence is so important for children and for adults.
For sure.
But I saw the difference with my kids, man. Like what a difference it makes when they started jiu-jitsu. You know, they're already playing sports.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a coincidence. I saw them get better in their sport when they started jiu-jitsu. And I think it's the fact that the confidence level that they create on the physical side and on the mental side. So it's amazing what the sport of jiu-jitsu is doing. MMA. Obviously, we have our local fighter here with Masvidal, and we watch him and everybody who's involved in MMA and jiu-jitsu and whatnot. But I happen to really like the sport and respect. And here's what I will say: you never know, man. That's when I walked into to Technica. You see dudes big, small, and I'm like, I started rolling with the smallest guy, and I swear to God, I had Spider-Man on me, man. I was like, I couldn't get him off of me. He just kept putting his feet on my waist, and I'm trying to go around them.
Not happening.
And it wasn't happening. So let's talk a little bit about Project Grapple. I know that you started this this non-for-profit organization here in Miami, and you're helping kids.
Yeah, so
let's talk about that, man.
So I'll give you like a little bit of the
and why. What's your why there?
Yeah. So I'm a school teacher. I've been a school teacher here in Miami for close to 15 years. My first school that I worked at was Holmes Elementary right there in Liberty City on 67th and 12th. And so I was a teacher there, and reading is like my focus now. I'm a reading specialist at my current school. But you would see, like, there are a lot of programs for kids.
You're a reading specialist?
Yeah, so I'm the reading coach at an elementary school. So I work with kindergarten through 5th grade. I work with students and teachers specifically on reading instruction.
That's amazing. My kids go to a nice school. They go to Westminster Christian, and one of the things that they're always talking about is making sure our kids are reading. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's harder now. Like, I feel like I see less and less kids reading, especially like for us, our traditional, like growing up is like, I expect to see a kid with a book, and now so much of stuff is online. So it's harder to get the kids reading. But yeah, I mean, the simplest thing is like, when it comes to reading, the thing I would say is like, they got to do it. Like anything. The problem is the kids who are strong readers read more because they're good at it, and the kids who struggle with reading read less. So the gap just like continues to grow. So,
do you think technology and like Audible stuff is that really harming kids from the learning process of reading?
I think it's like a double-edged sword, right? I think so much now they have options besides reading, right? Like if I'm interested in dinosaurs or whatever it is, like I can just grab YouTube and be like, dinosaurs. I don't have to read. You know what I'm saying? Where in the past, like when I was growing up, it's like if you wanted to know more about dinosaurs, well, TV wasn't on demand. So like maybe you would find a TV show that was about dinosaurs, but what day is it on? What time is it on? So books and reading was like the primary way. I think technology, like anything, it has its like pluses and its minus. It's good side, its bad side. I think we got to be careful though with the amount of time that kids are spending doing that kind of stuff. And like I'm a father of 2. My kids are real small. But like from the jump, just being around kids as much as I am, that was something I was like really conscious of, like how much time, my little ones, my older kids make fun of me, but I'm like real strict. Like my older ones don't spend time on a screen at all. Like they don't get screen time at all.
And we do the same thing. I mean, my daughter's 9, and my son's 7, and sometimes it's like a little difficult. Yeah. But because they're involved in sports, it takes up a lot of their time. But like we are very conscious of that. I know my wife is for sure. Yeah. And I know they read every single night. Yeah. It's funny when even before my kids were born, I remember my wife would read to my kids in their belly. Same. I mean, I'm not sure.
Me too. I don't know, but I was trying everything.
She was like reading books on that, dude. Like maybe the kid will come out reading or something.
Yeah, I try to stack the deck anyway. I can't, you know what I mean? But I think like you just got to watch it. You got to be on top of it. I think as the kids get older, it's hard too because socially you can isolate your kids if like. Everybody is into this and you're the one kid who's like no video games, no TV, and then all the other kids in their class are into that kind of stuff. So it's like, are you kind of like outcast, putting them like outside of everybody else because all the other kids are into video games and you're like, no video games in my house. So then like socially now, like what does your kid have to connect? So I think it's just like a balance. And then as much as possible, if the parents in a group of kids, like if you have a group of kids that your kids socialize with, if the parents can get on the same page, I think it makes the things a lot easier. Like if you all get together and you're like, look, as a group, we're going to say no social media until this age. Then it's a lot easier than like your kid is the one kid who's not allowed to be on social media.
Got it, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think stuff like that, I think, not necessarily like with reading, but like sleep patterns. I know my older kids, it's like, man, they're on that phone like all night. You know, I'll tell them something like, open up your phone. Let me see your screen time. You know what I mean? I'm like, yo, like, how is that possible? Did you sleep at all last night? You know, so like if you have that, like kids will go and lay in their bed and you think they're asleep and they're on that thing all night and like sleep is super important.
My kids don't get their iPads and or they don't have a phone or nothing like that.
Yeah, and it's easy, right? Like it's easy to say like, hey, you know what I mean? Like they shouldn't be on it and this and that, but like I also understand the flip side too. There are times when like, man, my 3-year-old's losing it, and yeah, I could see like in the moment to be like, yo, just like take this and like I need a minute, you know what I mean? Or I need to get like I have something I have to get done, and like here, take this. So like I understand it takes like a lot of discipline too as a parent to hold that line.
You know what it is, Ryan? Like it's their reality. They were born into this, right? I mean, they're in the tech savvy. They're in the modern world. So like they're gonna have to know how to use a computer and communicate and God only knows. But I do think that there's a time and place for it, and I think the fundamental principles of reading, paying attention, and being present, right, with your family is so crucial.
That's a big one I think that I see. I mean, I think obviously the reading is something that stands out. The critical thinking, the like things that come, skills that come along with reading. But even just like, I think the biggest thing that scared me or that like stood out to me was like that interpersonal relationship or interpersonal communication is that I see the kids that are always on the screen. It's very passive, right? Like they're just receiving information. They're not really like exchanging information.
I never thought about it that way.
So like if you talk to kids too who are on the screen a lot, there is like a little social awkwardness, like, or if you go out to dinner and like, I understand the parents are out with their kids at dinner and it's like they want to have an adult conversation and it's easy to give the kid the phone and then the kid's quiet during dinner and the adults can, but like, man, I think there's a big value in your kids listening to adult conversations and like having to sit at the table and kind of like interact a little bit with adults and read social cues, like when you're looking at somebody in their eyes and you see like little things like that I think the kids are they're accelerated their development in some areas, but then like really like slowed it down in others. And I think that's one of the ones is like communication. If you see kids now, they struggle, you know what I mean? Like they look down a lot and they struggle with that one-on-one or like that person-to-person communication. It's interesting. I just think you got to keep an eye on it and watch out for that like they don't go in their little bubble. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and again, that's why I'm such a believer in sports and whatnot and outside activities or music or art or do something because it takes your attention and makes it, helps you be in the present moment and keeps you away from like becoming almost robotic. Yeah. If you, I've done this before. I've sat at a restaurant with my wife. I'm like, hey, look around. Yeah. Look at every family here, and everybody's on their phone. Yeah.
I had a distinct moment that like kind of before my son was born or maybe like right. I'm trying to think. We were at a wrestling tournament. He either was like less than 6 months old or he was just about to be born. And the wrestling tournament's like a beehive, you know what I mean? Like there's stuff going on. There are kids everywhere. There are parents everywhere. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's probably like 10 mats, so like 10 matches going on at one time. And there was a kid who was like, I would say a toddler. I don't know what age, around 2 or so. And he was in a stroller with an iPad. And I walked around the tournament because your kids would be like at different mats. So you like, and man, like all of a sudden I was like, man, I've passed this kid. Like all day I've been walking by this kid and I have not seen him get up from that stroller or put that iPad down. Like that kid just missed that. Like there's all this action and like opportunities for interaction with other kids and all this stuff. And like, yo, that kid just sat in the stroller and looked at that iPad for like 6 hours.
When you'll go on a vacation, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say you're driving down the mountains of North Carolina. Yep. And your kids are on their iPad, and I'm driving. I'm like, look at the sights. I'm like, guys, look at these mountains. Look at how beautiful. And I've lost my marbles if I see my kid on their iPad. And again, it's there's a time and place for it, but you also don't want to miss on the moments. And it is a double-edged sword, Ryan. And even you're a school teacher. Mm-hmm. I don't know about your school, but in the school where my kids go to school, technology is a big deal. Yeah. And they're investing into kids' laptops and when we had COVID, all the kids were zoomed in and it doesn't. I don't know how that plays long term into a kid's life, and that's why I was advocating for, look, I understand COVID's around and I respect it, and I understand that some teachers are scared, but at some point we got to go back with these kids, man. These kids need it, you know?
Yeah, I think
some kids eat there.
Yeah. A lot
right,
of kids,
right.
Yeah, a lot of my kids rely on at least one, if not two meals a day from the school. I think
I definitely want to talk about that.
I think it's two. I think with the COVID stuff and the teachers, like the teachers at my school that I talked to, I said, I think it's just a matter of how you view yourself. And maybe like you don't give yourself enough credit. I said, you're a frontline worker. You're a frontline worker, like a cop, like a firefighter.
Every day.
Like a nurse, you're a frontline worker. And like you got to see your job as such. That like these kids at home, you know, yes, academically they're falling behind, but like there are a lot of other side effects too. So I think if you see yourself as a teacher, like as a frontline worker during COVID, then, and if the larger society sees you as that, then like maybe it's a little bit different. You know what I mean? Maybe that you feel different about coming back to be like, oh yeah, I'm essential. You know what I mean? I'm essential, like part of this community, and I'm doing, you know, maybe more harm than good, keeping the kids home. So like, how can we get them back safely? And the teachers got to, you know what I mean? The teachers got to be there. So that was like the thing I tried to have some of my teachers think about is like, yo, you're a frontline worker. Like you are super necessary, right?
And let me tell you something. I don't know if you've listened to some of the stuff I talked about. In the podcast, I talk about environment a lot. Yeah. And one of the things that I've said is, you know, I know what it's like to be in an unhealthy environment, and I know that sometimes we tell everybody you got to create an environment. You got to create a good healthy environment. And I know that's tough to do. Yeah. And I realized that I was talking about environment, but I wasn't saying how to do it. And the first thing I said was like, talk to your teachers, man. Yeah. You know, those are the people that are with you every single day. Yeah. And teachers are special. They change lives every single. I was a teacher when I first came out of minor league baseball, and man, I could tell when a kid was having something bad happen at home. Like I just knew by how the kid was, you know, acting or reacting, and you have a pulse on that. And people don't realize how important it is for these kids to be with each other, to be collaborating, to be talking, to be playing, to be active. Yeah. And when you stick these kids at home for a year and they're not in a good environment, you've made it just that much worse for them. So, you know, one thing Americans do is we take risk. Yep. Every single day of our life, right? And sometimes you got to, like you said, you got to put yourself, you can't make it about you, man. Yeah. And you know what? I think that what you said is amazing, by the way, about frontline worker. I didn't even see it that way, but you are. You're in the front lines every single day fighting for a child. Yeah. You know, making sure that child is reading, learning math, learning their curriculum so that they can go on into their and have a better life. Yeah. But hopefully a lot of teachers, you know, we can pump this out and have teachers listen and understand that. And I think a lot of teachers do. Yeah. I think there's some. I mean, I don't know what to. Ryan, I don't know what to believe anymore when you read the paper about the teachers union. One union is saying no, one is saying yes. Here's what I will say: I guarantee there's a lot of teachers out there that want to be back. They want to be safe. Yeah. Use common sense, and want to do what's right for the kids. So
yeah, that's been my experience, and like I think like you said, it's hard to tell nowadays like what's real, what's true, what's not real, and what's sensationalized. But I know like at my school, you know, the teachers want to come back. They realize the importance of their job. They want to be in the building. They realize that like what the kids are getting at home, educationally is not of the same quality, but also like socially and developmentally, all the wraparound services that schools provide, whether it's school lunches, counseling, positive interactions and relationships with other adults and children, like all that stuff has a big impact on health as well. And they all want to come back. And you know, some of them, you know, it's like, you know, I can think of one teacher who takes care of his father who's in his 90s. So like in the beginning, you know what I mean? We kind of said like, hey, if we have a group of kids that want to be online, like he would be the best one because, man, if he were to take something home to his dad who's in a high risk group, then that makes sense. But
if you're not in that category,
if you're not in that category, and the majority of teachers, especially as we got more information about COVID and whatnot, they were on board, and we were like 70. For a minute now, I think we've been around 75 or 80% of the kids back in the building anyway. Okay. So we got a lot of them back. And that it was in big part to like the teachers making the push, reaching out to the parents saying like, hey, you know, We're going to be safe. We didn't see a lot of transmission in the school. I mean, like I said, it's a small sample size and it's just my school, but you would see kids test positive in a class, but you wouldn't see 6 kids test positive in a class,
like
right?
an outbreak.
Yeah, so what you can kind of like deduce is that like the kid probably got it at home when he's comfortable with the mask off from someone at home, but like student to student transmission, we didn't see a lot of evidence of that happening.
Yeah, we didn't see it at my kids' school either, and we were one of the first ones to open. And again, I mean, I was dying for him to go back because,
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter, she was okay, but
Yeah.
my son,
Yeah.
no shot, man. He's like running around with a football in his hand
Yeah.
and not paying attention. But let's talk about Project Grapple. How'd you lead into that and why?
So I'm at the school homes. I'm teaching for a while. I'm doing jiu-jitsu at the time, and there was like a couple like different things that kind of went into that decision. But first, like when I got there in Liberty City, like man, if you're from Miami, like football, that's it. It's religion. The first day of school, I asked my kids, how many of you guys play football? It's like all the boys' hands go up. And I'm like, cool, so when's your game? I'll come watch. And like they all play for like 4 different teams in one class. And I'm like, wait, like you all don't play on the same team? Like how do you play on different teams? There's such a demand for football that like they can fill multiple teams in Liberty City.
So you can have like 4 105 teams?
Yeah. You'll have like Liberty City Warriors, you'll have Gwen Cherry's Bulls, you'll have Helping Hand, you'll have like
I saw Liberty City Warriors was it a Netflix show?
Yeah, they had a documentary, yeah. Luther Campbell's big, like
yeah.
Yeah.
They
pump kids out. Like, man, they pump kids out. They do a great job with their
He's
kids.
doing a great job with that program, huh?
Yeah, that's a definite bright spot. But I saw that like, okay, cool, my boys have football. There weren't a lot of other options, like in terms of sports or things for the kids to do outside of sports. And for the girls, I mean, they had cheerleading, dance for some of my girls, and a little bit of track. Miami Northwestern, man, their girls track team is like, that coach is like the one. I respect her like so much. She like consistently like produces champs, like great program. And they have a youth program that has some participation there. But overall, like I didn't see a big variety of kind of like extracurricular activities for the kids, especially the girls. And then also I didn't see maybe I saw a missed opportunity to really connect what the kids are doing in sport to something bigger in terms of like character development, developing character skills, and the kids really understanding that like the things that I have to do in sport to be great are the same things that I have to do to be great at my school or to be great when I get older, in whatever profession I pursue. It's the same kind of things that make me make my relationships strong. So trying to make the connection between sport, the thing that kids gravitate to, the thing that kids love, and say like, look, all those things that can help you be successful on the field or on the mat, all those skills are the same skills. You just got to apply them to the classroom, to your relationships, or when you get older, to your profession. So I think those two things were just like a variety of different activities, right? Like the kids were pretty like narrow in their options. And then I didn't see as many programs making that like direct connection between like, hey, you guys, it's bigger than like winning a game. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like we're working on something bigger. Our goals are super important when it comes to winning and performance and results.
Doubt.
And we set performance goals, but we set them for the chase, and who we become as a result of that chase is the most important thing, not whether or not we ever get to that goal, right? So the goal is there essentially just to be the carrot, you know what I mean, to give us something to chase, because we know that in that chase, the skills and the character that we develop is like what we're really after.
And they're building. Kids are building character, building self-discipline.
So I saw like, I did jiu-jitsu, so like that was the logical thing for me, right? Like, okay, cool. Well, could we do something with jiu-jitsu? And in my time in Brazil, there's a ton of social projects in Brazil that do, Terere's Kids Project, Rocinha Project, like amazing social projects there in the favelas that provide jiu-jitsu free of cost to the kids.
How the favelas, man? I heard it's as
It's weird. Like, it's double-edged. It's like, I said that there's like this duality, right? Where it's like, yeah, it's dangerous. Yeah, there are a lot of bad things, but like there's also a lot of like great things too. You know what I mean? So I think like what we tend to see on the news is like violence. You know what I mean? And for, we could go for hours about why that is, why we see that. But I think there's also great stories in the favela, whether it be like the social projects or the people looking out for each other and the art and the culture and the stories of like success and overcoming and stuff that come out of those favelas. So I think, we tend to get from the media, from the outside, they're painted and portrayed, whether it's in movies or media, in one way. But I think like anything, it's complex, just like social media, it's complex. It's not as simple as we want it to be to say it's this or it's that. Violence is a reality,
How bad is the violence where your kids come from?
What would I say? I mean, that's another thing like I struggle with because similar to what I said about the favelas, I think the same way. Like Liberty City has a reputation because of First 48 and because of the stuff that happens there, and like it's a reality. You know what I mean? Like it is. I have stories, you know what I mean, of kids that most people in the United States would probably have a hard time comprehending. Heavy stuff, for kids, things kids have seen or things that have happened to kids. Spending the amount of time I have in the neighborhood. Like I have a lot of those stories. But I think those stories get told. Those stories, that narrative is like really strong. And the power of narratives, I think, is real, and like what you think of Liberty City is in Miami is very segregated. And so like what the majority of Miami or the outside world sees of Liberty City is what they see on TV or what they see on the news or what they hear, like folklore, you know what I mean? Like about how dangerous or wild it can be. But that's like, again, I think everything is really like one-sided. It's really complex because I think there's awesome things that are going on in Liberty City too that like you just never hear about. You know what I mean?
Everybody's so focused on the negative part.
Yeah, I mean the example I would give is like, you have a crazy parent, right, at the school. And the crazy parent comes to school and does something crazy. And then the people who witnessed it or whatever, they go home and they tell that story because like that's a funny story, you know what I mean? Or you're not gonna believe what happened. But the story they don't tell is like one of my kids, like Kendrick, his mom, a single mother, 6 kids, works her butt off to take care of the kids, does everything she can to put the kids in any kind of program to make sure that they're gonna have every opportunity in life. And like that story just not as like sexy, you know what I mean? It doesn't get told. Or the parent who
it doesn't attract.
Yeah, the parent who works 2 jobs and like can't make it to parent night because they're working that second job to try to put food on the table. The parent who's trying to get out of their current situation or find a better situation for their kids and their family. And it's like those stories get, I feel like, drowned out by First 48, this kid got shot or this person got shot. Like those stories get drowned out. Like I don't mean to downplay the violence. Like it's definitely a reality. You know what I mean? It's something that my kids have had to deal with since like a young age. But I think, I'm always like, I try to be mindful anyway of like letting people know, because most of the people I meet or talk to, they don't like I said, Miami. Like you think Miami, you think South Beach. Like you're not going across the causeway. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're not going over Northwest, right? Like if the sign says Northwest, you're like, no, we're not going over there. So I think, I try to be mindful anyway to say like, yeah, that is part of it, and like, but it's way more complex than that. And there's so many like positive things and great things going on in the neighborhood that don't get told, and so many great people that look out for each other and look out for the kids in the neighborhood, and great programs. I mean, Liberty City Warriors is the one. Like they get pubs, so like you see them on Netflix.
I saw them, dude, and like I said, Luther Campbell doing a great job with them, and those kids can play, man.
Yeah,
and their smiles and they're good kids, and
so
athletes.
I think just to make sure, like at Holmes, there was like a chess club. You know what I mean? I remember when I was teaching there, and like the chess club did really well and stuff, and it's like, yeah, but like nobody wants it. You know what I mean? That's not, no one's turning in at 8:00 to watch, some elementary kids from Liberty City play chess.
However,
like, First 48, that thing rolls, and you're like, yo, that dude got shot at the bus station, and this and that, and
and even our local news stations do the same thing, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
They do the same thing, and that's just the media. We talk about all the time, just negativity for whatever reason, fear sells, and people love that. But
so that was like kind of, I took a left, but like, so Project Grapple, I said the tool I have is jiu-jitsu. The problem I see is like variety of extracurricular activities, especially for the girls. I don't know, that always stood out to me. That's like, man, if you're a girl who doesn't want to cheer, you know what I mean? Like, man, like track, and that's about it. I don't see girls basketball at a young age, right? When they get to high school and stuff, none of my kids had, that I saw, access to like, or easy access. At least it wasn't popular, like girls softball, basketball, soccer. So I was like, all right, well, as a reading teacher, as a reading coach, there's all these programs, right? Like we're one of the lowest 300, or the school I'm at now, as well as the school that I was at before, Holmes, was one of the lowest 300 schools in the state.
What does that mean?
So performance-wise, like standardized testing, there we fall in a group of schools that are the lowest 300 in the state. And because of that, you go to school for an extra hour a day that is targeted. That hour is targeted at reading intervention. Okay. So your reading scores are low. So I see programs like that, right? I see before-school tutoring. I see, you know, after-school programs that, you know, try to address all the academics, and the kids are there for the extra hour. But I'm like, there's more to it. Like, that's one aspect of the child, right? And, like, I spend my day kind of focused on that aspect. But, like, what about this other side? Like, maybe there's a way in, kind of like the back door of, like, hey, maybe if we're missing the boat. Maybe I'm trying to, like, hammer home, like, why reading is important, and, like, why math, and why they need to do well in school. Or maybe it's like, well, what if I use sport to kind of like develop their character? Like maybe that's a area, a market, right, that isn't being addressed. And so that was kind of like the thought of Project Grapple, and a special kid kind of spurred it off. Was like this kid, his cousin was in my class, Al Atacola. So his cousin was in my class, and like the first day of school, male teachers aren't popular, right, in elementary school, like, or not popular, not common, I should say. So, like, my first day at Holmes, I'm from California. I moved here, Liberty City. They give me the address. I come, like, hey, where am I at? Cool. All right, cool. Here's my school. All right. And I'm walking across the courtyard, and he's, like, one of the first people, I think definitely the first kid who came up to me, like, introduced himself. So he's like, oh, I'm Al. What's up? You know, he's like, oh, there's a guy. Like, who's this guy? You know what I mean? So he introduced himself. His cousin ended up being in my class, so he would be, like, around my class a lot, like, either to pick her up before school or after school, and to drop her off before school. And we would always like talk. We would always chop it up, and like awesome kid. Till this day, like, man, I got so much love for that kid. If you know me, you know that kid where he is in my heart. But he was in trouble. Like, yo, I'm telling you, like every day, that kid would fight. I would go to the office, and they would be like, oh, he did this and he did that. And I was just like, no, like we're not talking about the same kid.
Doesn't make sense.
I'm like, but Atacola is a pretty unique name, so there's probably not a second Atacola. Like, they must be talking about this kid. So I was just like, why is it? Like, what is it about? Like, why do I see this side of him, and why is that not happening everywhere else in the school? And he was a kid. He would see, like, my gym bag with my gi and stuff. He'd be like, what's that? You know what I mean? And he's a football kid, like all the boys in Liberty City. So eventually, like, he just would bug me and be like, what's that? It's jiu-jitsu. What is it? And I'd explain it to him. And he was a kid who fought all the time, so maybe he was, like, a little more naturally drawn to the idea of, like, physical competition in that way. And so finally one day I was just like, all right, come on, let's go. Let's go. Let's go talk to Grandma. Let's see if she's going to let you come. So he came, and he started doing jiu-jitsu. And so, like, really the program started unofficially there with just, like, one kid.
With just you and him.
After school, he would get in the truck, and we'd go to practice. And then I would drop him home at night. So it just started with this one kid. And I saw, like,
the change,
the strides, you know what I mean, that he made as a kid. And you see the kid for, like, what he really is. You know, you get to know him. You're like, man, what a great kid. What great development we've seen from this kid. And, like, he's an adult now. Like, it's wild to see. He's bigger than me. So it started with that one kid, and then it was kind of like, all right, well, this is really cool for one kid, but, like, how could we do this for more kids? Like, I kind of see that it could work, and I would start to get an idea of how it would work. So after a couple of years with him, is like we made the jump to see, like, all right, how could we offer this to more kids? So we started in the school, which was really good. There was an empty classroom. They gave us a classroom. We gave out applications, you know, for the kids to apply to be part of the program. And we got our first bunch of, like, 16 kids. And we just started the program there. Like, you know, I knew I wanted to do it. And once I told the kids, like I knew, you know, you need like a nudge sometimes.
Yeah.
Like you have these ideas and you're like, oh, but, and you tend to focus on the reasons why you can't do it. So I gave out the flyers and the applications kind of as a way to be like, look, man, you promised these kids now. You have to find a way. You have to follow through now because you gave them applications. You put yourself out there. Yeah, like, you know, it's like people do the weight loss thing, like, and they go on social media and they're like, I'm going to lose this. And then it's like, okay, now I'm accountable to somebody. So like that layer of accountability when we gave out the applications was big. And from there, it was just like foot on the gas. Like, how are we going to make this work? We need space. We need mats. We need gis. And so the kids did their applications. I got the applications back. And we identified the 16 kids that we felt were like the best fit. And then it just started.
I want to go back to this kid real quick.
Yeah.
Why do you think that he was acting out in physical confrontation and then showing you a different side of him?
I mean, you could see him talk, like on the documentary. I mean, he's talked about it.
There's a documentary?
A little bit, yeah. On YouTube, there's a short documentary about the program when it started.
Okay.
Him, let's see. He's one I get emotional with just because his story. His dad, I'm trying to think, like, everything for him, like how he's explained it. It was hard. I think he struggled because, like, his dad was incarcerated at that time. And as a kid, he didn't know how to deal with, like, a lot of those emotions. And so I think it came out, like, in him acting out like that. So I think that would be, like, the big catalyst for him is, like, his mom wasn't around at the time.
And I figured I wanted you to say that.
Yeah.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah.
And that's why I talk. And when I talk to, whether it's me, Doug, you here, and Johnny, and it's why I have this podcast, and it's why I focus on an environment so much, because when human beings don't just do things because they want to be bad people.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the pain is real, man.
Yeah.
And we're so, as human beings, sometimes we're so quick to judge. Mm-hmm. We're so quick to just like point the finger
and not
understand why. Like, you don't just do that. There's a reason why you're doing that.
Yeah. So he was like, his dad was incarcerated. Mom wasn't around and hadn't been around for a long time. Lived with grandma. Man, grandma's like a special lady too. You know what I mean? Like, I have so much love for her. But yeah, so I think it's just like as a young kid, like he struggled with that, you know, like, man, my mom's not around. My dad's not around. I live with my grandma. And
he's angry.
Yeah. I mean, like, and it's just hard. Like, you think security wise, I think like as a kid, your mom is a lot of times, right? Your mom is your security. So like, no matter what, I get blew out, like we got blown out in the football game or whatever. But, like, I come home to mom, and, like, that unconditional love that I get from mom is, like, really comforting for a kid and, like, inspires confidence and, like, really can, like, settle kids down. And I think when they don't have that, you see it. Like, there's a survival mode almost that you see kids, like, go into. Like, they don't have that security blanket of that, I don't know, it's like, something about a mother. You know what I mean? And they don't have that, and boys too, and girls too. But like the strong father figure is really important too. But like, I feel like there's something primal about the mother. You know what I mean? And like they get in survival mode. Like, hey, this is real. Like, I gotta survive. I don't have that that safe feeling, that safe place that like mom can provide.
And I could not agree with you more. I think a mom is it's hard to explain. I hear you, and I understand that in many ways what he may have been going through. It's funny, yesterday, and I'll use this as an example. So I have my little one now. So I told him we're going to start doing 30 pull-ups every other day, and he's been doing that. And then I said we just have this little, I put out this little itinerary for him to get better throughout the summer. And yesterday was hitting day, so we were gonna hit, and then we shoot soccer balls, and he had just got back from jiu-jitsu. And so he's doing a drill with me, and I see him getting better. So I bring out mom, like, Mom, come watch Sean. Yeah. And when he's doing this thing, and all of a sudden she's just doing this lovey-dovey thing on him, and I stop for a minute, and I'm like, this is like that love. Yeah. That is what this whole thing is about. Like the kid could have. It didn't really matter to my wife what he could have done, right? Like it just didn't matter. I'm like fired up, like I'm watching his improvement, and then she's like, "You're so handsome, I love you," and then and I just, it's so important for a mother to be present with their kids, because you know, us dads, we have a tough job, right? Like we have to be the discipline, we have to be the character, but you can't have two people kind of like that. You know what I mean? Because then that creates like a little imbalance. And I think mom gives you like that I think you're born that way, dude. Like you just, that nurturing, like you said, confidence and like emotional stability that is important to any child. And when you grow up in a household, when you don't have a dad and you don't have a mom, especially a mom. It's hard, man. Yeah,
it's heavy. So, I mean, the thing with him, like with I see, I guess, with all the kids, really, the thing that like stands out and the thing that like, well, I will always bet on my kids. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I will always bet on my kids. It doesn't, like, you could tell me whatever the odds are, I will always bet on my kids, because like you will not find a more resilient bunch
of children.
Yeah, like resilient. You know what I mean? That's like with him too. That's what I think. I'm like, yo, that kid's resilient.
And they face adversity so early on in life. You know, here's the flip side. We're growing up our kids in, you know, in an emotional stability and emotional intelligence, a good household, a good environment. And it's funny because sometimes I'm thinking, I'm like, man, like maybe I have a little bit of like my personal edge comes from the fact that I had to learn how to like survive. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's like a good thing. But you know, I look, sometimes I like, I've said this story. I think I don't know if I told you this story. And I don't know this dude. I don't know his parents. I could be completely wrong. But it was just what I saw. Boros, the kid who won the Heisman Trophy with the LSU Tigers, quarterback. So I'm watching this kid give his Heisman speech, right? And his mom and his dad are in New York. And here's this kid who wins the Heisman, and he's so well spoken, ultimate competitor. Right? And when I was looking at the TV, looking at that kid, I'm looking at his parents. And again, I don't know them. But I'm going to make the assumption that he grew up in a really nice house, like a good household. I'm like, man, you know what? You don't have to grow up in a bad environment to be a competitor. You don't have to like go through like abuse to get that edge. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be honest with you, I understand environment. That's a whole different topic. But I'll never forget when I was in junior college, like I went to a buddy's house. His name was Zach Shipley. And I sat down and I had dinner with his parents, and I'm like, and they were like, would you like to eat? Would you like some iced tea? And I fell in love with that. I'm like, this actually, people who sit down and talk to each other, like, dude, like this is real. No, I'm being honest. I'm 18 years old. I'm in Kansas. I never kind of did that. And I'm like, and then I'm watching that kid. I'm like, you know what? And we have this thing called Blueprint Baseball, the same way you have Project Grapple. I'm like, you know, you don't have to like. Unfortunately, what you're doing is unbelievable. You're grabbing these kids and creating the environment they don't have, right? But we don't have to go through all this hardship and this like insane, like we used to. I mean, your eyes got watery. God only knows what that kid went through. That's not, because that's a scar for him forever. He may be resilient and resourceful, but we don't have to go there, man. You know, and I think there's generational patterns too. I mean, I think if you do that, you're born into that, you're probably going to end up doing that. And then your kids do that.
There's a momentum, right?
Right? Like it's something
it's
like
hard to
it's hard to stop. So let's talk about all the other fun stuff. So you got Project Apple, you've got jiu-jitsu in there. Doug was saying, I think the kids are doing hip hop.
No. I mean, maybe.
No. I'm sorry. But or music. Is there a music aspect to it?
They've known to have a dance off.
Just wrestling. Okay.
They've known to have a dance off at the end of practice. They've been known.
Okay.
They'll compete at anything. But like we started with jiu-jitsu, and so like I think jiu-jitsu is a special tool. now I'm gonna have people hit me up like, you're gonna start. Like,
well, I may have started something else.
Like, jiu-jitsu I could do. I don't know. I might need to find another coach for hip hop dance. But yeah, we started with jiu-jitsu, and I think jiu-jitsu is an awesome tool to develop character for like all the amazing reasons that people know. You know, discipline, respect, and grit are like three of the pillars we really focus on. And like I said, I think jiu-jitsu is a special tool to teach that. You know what I mean? To teach those things. And I think all sports are valuable. I just think like jiu-jitsu will fit that, like I said, was the best tool for what I was trying to accomplish.
I see it, and again, I'll mention about my kids. I see it in jiu-jitsu. I told you earlier, the kindest professional instructors, the fact that they teach you how like not to fight. Like I've heard them tell my son and my daughter like, hey, we don't want to start a problem. Like we're trained to make sure that nothing happens. Yeah. But if something does go down,
you know you're prepared.
You're prepared.
So like we started with jiu-jitsu, was great. You know what I mean? The kids loved it. And then what ended up happening though is like jiu-jitsu is not jiu-jitsu is like not an Olympic sport, not a scholastic sport. So what you would get is, and in South Florida, it's popular and like relatively popular. You know what I mean? But my kids come from football. There's a game every weekend. You know what I mean? They want to compete. They're like, when do we get to fight other kids? Like, I'm tired of fighting him. I fight him every day. Like, when do I get to go against somebody else? And I would be like, look, there's not that many tournaments. The cost associated with the competition in jiu-jitsu, like a tournament's $100. You know what I mean? Registration for one kid. I've got 16 kids. If I take 16 kids to a tournament, it's $1,600. You know what I mean? And the frequency that they happen is not the same, you know? And so a friend of mine was like, man, take them to wrestling tournaments. It's like $20. I was like, yeah, but they don't know the rules. Like, I don't teach wrestling. Like, they don't know the rules. He's like, just tell them to take the kids down and let them up. Their jiu-jitsu is going to grow because they're going to get a chance to compete more. They're going to develop on their feet better. You know what I mean? And you just, like, they'll pick up the rules of wrestling as they go. In the beginning,
every once in a while they'll choke somebody out.
Yeah, like in the beginning, just tell them to like take the kids down and let them up. So it's like 2 points for a takedown in folk style wrestling, 1 point for an escape. So you like take them down and let them up. And then he's like, during freestyle season, there's even less stuff on the ground, which is where it gets more like maybe confusing for the kids to differentiate between what are the rules of wrestling and what are the rules of jiu-jitsu. So it's like, and when freestyle season comes, it's like they take them down after 15 seconds, they're going to stand the kids back up anyway. So take them there, and it's cheap, and your kids can get matches. So if they're bugging you about competing, and there's not enough jiu-jitsu tournaments and they're too expensive, take them to these local wrestling tournaments. So I was like, oh, all right. My kids are competitive. They're not going to back down. You know what I mean? They don't care. They'll play you in badminton. They think they're the world champion in badminton. So, especially one of them. So we started going to wrestling tournaments, and the kids liked it. You know what I mean? The kids like the competitiveness of wrestling. Wrestling's a little bit more competitive of a sport than jiu-jitsu.
Really?
Yeah. A different type of kid, I think, is drawn to wrestling than generally speaking, is drawn to jiu-jitsu. It's a little more intense, especially at the youth level, a little more aggressive. So my kids really liked it. They started like, so then we started, they're like, hey, but like, I want to learn the rules too. Like, I want to win. Like, the first couple times it was cool. Hey, we're just going to go do it. Like, no pressure. You don't know the rules. Take them down, let them up. But, like, after the first time, they're like, yeah, but I don't want to lose. So, like, what are the rules to this game? So then we started splitting time between wrestling and jiu-jitsu. And over time, like, in sharing that time, the realization I came to was, like, so, like, ultimately my goal is the kids, right? Like, I love jiu-jitsu, but that's a me thing. You know what I mean? My goal in Project Grapple was not to be an evangelist for jiu-jitsu. Like, it wasn't to spread jiu-jitsu out the country. My goal in starting Project Grapple was, like, I see a need. I see an opportunity with the kids. Again, go back. What's the best tool to fit that? So in the beginning, it was jiu-jitsu. But then when the kids started doing wrestling, I started to realize, like, all right, let's think about this. Opportunities in college, scholarship and help getting into colleges. Jiu-jitsu, there are none, right? My kids could go to college on a wrestling scholarship.
Yeah.
My girls could go to college. Girls wrestling right now is like exploding. My girls could go to college on a wrestling scholarship, right? High school, like, man, my kids do really good. Like, I don't know, maybe there's some high schools that are a little bit better academically than their home school, that they might have like
some better chances,
some opportunities,
scholarship opportunities, and
yeah. So I was like, all right. So the upside for my kids in terms of like what I'm really trying to do, right, for the kids, is a little bit higher with wrestling, and then my overhead for wrestling, like I said, a jiu-jitsu tournament And shout out to New Breed, because New Breed would give us a discount. They knew kind of like what we were doing, and they would give us a little discount. But even then, with the discount, it's still double the price of a wrestling tournament. You know what I mean? And it's single elimination. So if you lose once in jiu-jitsu, it's like, thanks for coming. You know, we took a group of kids to, Kids International in California, which is like one of the biggest kids tournaments. You know, I think their match time is like a 2-minute match for that age group, or 3 minutes. Like, you fly to California, if you get choked out in the first 30 seconds, it's thanks for coming. You know, thanks for your $100 entry fee, your flight, all that. Like, we'll see you next year.
Take the red eye.
Yeah. So then, yeah, exactly. So then in wrestling, the entry fee to the tournament was cheaper. It's double elimination, which, if we're talking about character, the opportunity to build character in a double elimination tournament is like,
because you can bounce back.
You lost, dude, but your day's not over. Your day's not over. Dust yourself off. Get on the backside of the bracket, and I want to see you wrestle back for 3rd place. So, like, that opportunity I saw was really good. And then the frequency that the tournaments were happening, right, was a lot more. So, like, my kids could wrestle, not in huge tournaments. It's at a high school gym. Their overhead is a lot less than, like, New Breed or any of the other jiu-jitsu events. But my kids could go get matches. You know what I mean? And I feel like there's so much that the kids learn in competition. So all these things kind of just started to slowly push us from jiu-jitsu to wrestling. And not for any reason like jiu-jitsu is bad. It just like wrestling was a better tool. You know what I mean? Was a better tool in terms of opportunity for the kids. And they started to really enjoy it. So over time, I mean, now we're pretty much like exclusively wrestling for that reason. And it just was about like, again, what's the better tool to kind of achieve what we're trying to do.
Yeah, well, you're giving them more opportunities. You're putting them out there more.
Yeah, and they love jiu-jitsu. Like, that's what they started with. And, like, they tell me all that, my one kid came up to me the other day, was like, oh, I saw this jiu-jitsu tournament. Like, what do you think? You think I could do, like, a super fight? And I'm like, man, you haven't done jiu-jitsu in, like, so long. So they have love for it. But, I mean, that's the other thing, too, is, like, later on in life, jiu-jitsu is a sport, too. You see people of all ages practice. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't see a lot of guys in their 40s wrestling. You know what I mean? There's no like local wrestling club where you're going to go see guys in their 40s. So like my kids, if they get to, later on in life, if they ever want to go back to jiu-jitsu, man, they have an awesome base and they can always make that transition. But at this moment in time, the opportunities in wrestling, both like as a tool to teach the character skills that we're trying to do and develop the kids in the ways that we're trying to develop them. And then also just in terms of opportunity, just became like a better fit, a more logical fit for us. So we kind of transitioned into wrestling now.
Nice. So as we start to wrap this up, how can the community help you with Project Grapple? Where can they find you on Instagram?
Okay. So we were bouncing around. Like I said, originally we were at the school that the kids attended and the school I worked at. I moved schools and the kids kind of graduated from that school. So the program then was kind of floating around and didn't really have a home. Okay. You know what I mean? We'd be at one of the city parks, would let us come with another program some days. Some of the local high schools would let us use the gym. But recently, around the beginning of the year, we got our own location, which is like huge. The kids have consistent training, their own place. No interruptions. It's our dedicated spot. So it's on 230 Northwest 71st Street. Okay. So like,
2nd Ave and 71st Street?
Yeah,
okay.
So like right around Little Haiti, Liberty City area. So we have our standalone location there, which is really big. And that's been amazing, but it's also increased our overhead by quite a bit because Miami real estate, as anybody knows, is booming, which is great for all the people in real estate, but not so great for the nonprofits trying to find places to rent. So I mean, as far as support goes, the number one thing, the thing that keeps me up at night, the thing that is like the biggest stress point is trying to raise the funds to make sure that we pay the rent and then obviously have the money to send the kids to tournaments and make sure they have equipment. Adidas is really good about helping us out. They give us a discount on like all the equipment and stuff like that. So shout out to Adidas. But yeah, that's the fundraising thing and like, I suck at asking people for stuff. Like, it's just like my personality, you know what I mean? I'm not good at fundraising. So that makes it a little more of a challenge as well. But I'd say, like, that's the number one thing. As though support goes, though, it's like, man, you could support us and, like, I understand not everybody's in a position to donate money. So you could support us in a lot of ways. You can share help spread the word about Project Grapple so more people know about it.
No doubt. You have an Instagram page?
Yeah, at Project Grapple.
Okay.
On Instagram. We have a website, projectgrapple.org. I'm working on it. Like, I'm not super techie either, so like it's in its beginning stages. But yeah, you can find most of the information. Instagram, we're really active. On the website has information too. Like if you know of a kid who you think would be a good fit,
okay,
it has like a little application on there they can fill out, give their information.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be a kid from a certain area. It could be a kid from anywhere.
Yeah, the focus of the program is like Liberty City, Allapattah,
got it.
Little Haiti. So yeah, I tend to like prioritize those kids.
I actually happen to be insuring some big projects in Allapattah.
Yeah.
So maybe we can put you in contact with like one of the developers I know out there. Yeah, because I think cool. she has a good pulse on what's going on out there.
Yeah. So like it's not a hard no, but like my priority is definitely the kids in those neighborhoods.
Got it.
And that just comes. I mean, a lot of that is just like I said. I spent a long time at that school, and I really feel a strong connection to that community, and wanted to help them out specifically. So I think you can check us out on Instagram or on the website, and we're always trying to raise money. But if that's not something that's in your something you can do, then any way you can help spread the word, any way you can support people who support us, I think is a big way too that people don't realize is there are a lot of people out there, whether it be Adidas, or a lot of people who support Project Grapple, and we post about those people all the time. I would mention y'all, but then someone would feel left out, so I won't go into all of them. But if you go on Instagram, you can see some of the companies and the individuals and businesses who support us, and support those businesses. You know what I mean? Help out people who do good things for the community, and
support your supporters, man.
Yeah, if you're not able to support directly, financially, then support it with your business. You know what I mean? Who you give your business to, because a lot of times that money finds its way back to great programs.
Awesome, man. Well, Ryan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. What you're doing with kids is a blessing, and I'm sure you're going to see the fruit in your kids and in your family. So
cool, man. Thanks. I appreciate the platform to help get the word out there, man. And
appreciate you having you on.
Yeah, it's been great, man.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it.
Take it easy.
Thank you.